this morning's class, maybe you've seen my Facebook post, is about awareness and power. So I've been thinking more about the warrior creed that I was talking about last week, and a few weeks ago we did a class on the theme from warrior to warrior. And this warrior creed I was given by one of my teachers, which is inspired by the Japanese samurai warriors, has a lot of things on it that we might not immediately associate with being a warrior. And last week we looked at the warrior's uniform being one of compassion and gentleness. And we did a whole thing on treading lightly and kind of taking things lightly. And we might normally, or I think I certainly used to think of warriorship as something very serious and quite heavy, like a burden, a sacrifice, that kind of stuff, which I think it can be as well. Certainly if we're going in to fight an actual battle in a war. But in terms of our normal, or well, not so normal at the moment maybe, but our householder lives as householders and lay practitioners of yoga and meditation, meaning that we're, kind of ordinary people living an ordinary life in England. We're not some kind of forest yogi in India who's renunciated everything and just sits around in a loincloth meditating all day. And in our lives, what might being a warrior mean, and what might being powerful mean? So another part of the warrior's creed is using awareness as a kind of a not a weapon, because it actually says I have no weapons, I make awareness my weapon. What is so powerful about awareness, and what does warrior power perhaps mean in relation to our lives? So that's what I wanted to look at today, and how we can perhaps create a feeling of being more powerful through yoga without needing perhaps weapons, or without needing to become a master practitioner of karate or martial arts. So being aware is seen as very powerful, and of course we all have awareness all the time, or we certainly have the possibility of awareness all of the time. We can even develop awareness of our dreams, and it's said we can develop complete awareness during the parts of sleep where we're not dreaming as well. So that's very advanced meditation or dream yoga. But we're already aware this morning. You're aware that you're awake and you're going to do some yoga. You're probably aware of what the weather is like if you've looked out the window or been outside. You know a lot of things, so knowing is part of awareness. And if we're not aware, so maybe we're not conscious of things, we're ignorant of things, we don't have a full understanding of a situation or ourselves or another person, and then that kind of weakens our capacity to respond in the best way that we could, or to be able to respond in the most skillful manner. So that's introducing the idea that awareness is something we all have, and most of the time we have some awareness of what's going on, at least some, unless we are unconscious or asleep. And we can develop it further to have the power of full awareness, of full understanding of what's happening in the present moment and in the world and in reality. So maybe we'll have a bit more awareness by the end of the week, and a bit more power derived from that. We'll see. We'll certainly have a go. So we'll start with a basic awareness practice, awareness of breathing. And as we go along, we'll explore what the power might be in these different forms of awareness, or where we place our attention. Because that's part of awareness too, is what we choose to be aware of. So again, it's said that very experienced long-time meditators can be aware of many, many, many things all at the same time in the present moment, and develop, for example, extremely good memory, because they're taking so much more in than the average person. So it's partly about choice. Where do we place our awareness? What is our capacity to notice? So we'll start with something familiar and simple, which is the breath awareness. Coming to lying down or seated or standing if you wish. It might be more comfortable to sit or lie down. And first of all, being aware of our body, our posture, the posture we're adopting. And how is that posture conducive to practicing awareness of breathing? So the first thing we might check is that we can breathe easily. So although we can do breath awareness, we can be aware of breathing in something like plank pose. It makes breathing quite hard when we're in plank pose. The breath is somewhat constrained by the muscles being very contracted around the abdomen and the shoulders in plank pose. So in breath awareness, in terms of meditation and working with the subtlety of breathing, we choose a posture where our shoulders can be quite relaxed. Our abdominal muscles can be relatively relaxed. They will be contracting on the exhale. And it's helpful if they can relax on the inhale. And then we can notice where we feel our breath in our body. And whether our breathing feels natural, whatever that means to you. So that might be a bit of a vague term. What is natural breathing? It's a way of breathing that feels easy, fairly effortless, although there's activity happening when we breathe. Effortless, easy. Another word comes into my mind is unconstrained. Sometimes when I start practicing awareness of breathing, I realize I want to maybe change where the top of my trousers is, because I feel it's constricting my belly, or maybe opening a button if I was wearing something like jeans. bras can be quite constrictive to breathing. Tension that we're holding around the chest and the belly, the throat as well. Is your throat relaxed? So we might become aware of things that we didn't notice before that are actually restricting the natural, easy flow of breathing. And then we can have a choice to change it. So maybe we decide not to wear that particular item of clothing anymore or as much, because we realize it affects our breathing. You're probably wearing something fairly comfortable and loose-fitting for yoga. Hopefully you are. But when we practice breath awareness at other points in our lives during the day, we might realize, oh, this pair of trousers is really restricting my breathing. I might take it to the charity shop. A simple example of how awareness might increase our power, because breath is obviously something that can give us a lot of life force and energy. If you have had a chest infection or you've got a medical condition that restricts your breathing or has restricted your breathing, then you might know it can make us very tired when our breathing is restricted. Even having a head cold, we can feel very, very tired and kind of much more limited in what we can do. And it's partly because our breath is affected. And then we can take some deeper breaths in, some more complete breaths out. So noticing that when we breathe out fully, we're slightly contracting our tummy muscles. And then the in-breath can feel deeper. It might feel kind of energizing. And then breathing out fully again can connect us a bit more with the sense of power and strength in our core, in those abdominal muscles. And then breathing in, allowing the breath to fully enter again to the lungs and the lungs to expand. Exhaling, breathing out fully. And after a few of those deeper breaths, we can let the breath then find its own rhythm again. And it might quieten back down. Good. Excellent. And we're going to explore some movement from the lying down position. So if you've been sitting, you can lie down, or if there's some reason you don't want to lie down, you can do some adaptations, I'm sure, quite easily of what we're doing lying down, sitting, or sitting on a chair. So aware of how we are in our bodies, in terms of health, in terms of our joints, our back. And that form of awareness gives us the capacity to choose what's best for us. So that's another form of power, knowing how we are and how different things affect us and noticing. So on the lying down position, inviting you to bend your knees, to feel the soles of your feet on the ground. We've been working quite a lot with the power of gravity and the strength of our bones and how we kind of develop a basic strength and power from having to relate to gravity all our lives. You know, ever since we were born, we've had to deal with gravity, and that gives us a basic muscular structure and bone structure, which we wouldn't have if gravity didn't exist. And we know from the experience of astronauts that their muscle strength weakens very considerably, even if they do all the exercises they're prescribed. They still come back a lot weaker than they were from journeys into space where there's no gravity, or a lot less. So we can feel that relationship to the floor and do some little pushing down movements through the feet, like a mini bridge, and notice that power you've got in pressing down through the feet, how it creates this lift and rolling up of your spine. And you can do a little of that or a lot. Connecting your attention, your awareness to how that feels, how the strength in your legs feels, how it feels to be able to push yourself up, carry your own body weight, which is fairly significant. Adult body is pretty heavy. Being aware of the strength in our lower body, how the ground supports us, how our muscles help to lift us, how our bones support us here, the shin bones, the ankle bones, the bones in the feet, the shoulder blades supporting the back of the head on the floor or the block or the cushion. And then coming back down, after a few of these bridges, we can bring our knees in towards our chest, feeling the structure of your knees underneath your hands, aware of the power of having these moving joints. It gives us capacity to move in certain ways, which gives us a lot of power. Then we can take a rock from side to side, feeling the back of our pelvis, capacity of rotation in the spine. You can roll your head to the right when your knees go to the left, and vice versa. We can be aware of both the flexibility and the power of our backbone, which is really designed for movement. So the power of the backbone, having a strong backbone, is a lot of it is to do with its design to be so flexible. And then we can come back to the center and being aware of our core, our abdominal muscles as we lower our bent legs back to the ground one by one if you're taking care of current back issues. And then I will do a little bit more for the core with our mini sit-ups. It might be very helpful to support your head in some way if your shoulders are okay, to interlace your fingers and place your hands behind your head. And again, you can keep these movements quite small. So you might exhale and just lift up a tiny bit. Inhale back down. Or you might go a bit further. And it's good to allow your elbows to come up towards your head as you roll up. And then on the inhale, slowly releasing your elbows back towards the floor. So we can also consciously and smoothly contract the front of the shoulders and release the front of the shoulders. And the same is happening with other muscles at the front of the chest and in the abdomen. I'm doing up to 4 more of these. Going smoothly and slowly with the breath. Exhaling, curling up. Inhaling, coming back down. Done 4 or finish this movement that you're back on, now. You can take a little rest, and if it's comfortable, you can keep your arms in this position with your hands behind your head, which might give us this kind of feeling of a holiday posture, of reclining in a hammock or something like that. We can make it an active rest where we stay aware of our surroundings with our eyes open. You might like to straighten out your legs to release the hip flexors, the muscles at the front of your hips. Notice your lower back goes into more of an upward curve, probably, if you're doing that. If that's not comfortable, then bend your knees again, of course. Notice how it is to rest with your eyes open. Let your eyes wander around the room. If you've got a window you could look out of, it's quite nice to see the sky, the view of the sky. And then we can bend our knees again, roll onto one side, and we'll come to all fours, and we'll do a bit of strengthening for the back of the body. So we've just been working from the bottom up. We did strengthen the back of the body in bridge pose, and then we went up to the sit-ups, strengthening the front of the body, some neck strengthening there as well, and shoulders. So now from the all fours position, you could come onto forearms if that suits you better. And we'll explore a bit of strength around the waist. First with the normal cat pose, or cat and cow it's sometimes called. So breathe out, tuck our tailbone under, then contracting the abdomen. Breathe in back to neutral, and then next out breaths into the backward bend. So again, a little abdominal contraction there, and inhaling back to neutral. So on the exhale, in the forward bend and the backward bend, you can think about the waist sort of narrowing, compressing, becoming smaller. And on the in-breath, when we go to neutral, sense of the waist widening and expanding. Exhaling, the waist narrowing. Inhaling, expanding. And after the next backward bend, take our buttocks back towards our heels. Walk our hands back a bit so we come into puppy dog pose. If your knees are uncomfortable, you could pop a cushion at the backs of your knees, or a yoga block. So that gives a bit more space at the back of the knee joint, which can be comfortable. If your ankles, if you get cramp very easily, you can put a rolled up blanket or a small cushion under your shins. I'll show you that as well. Most of you know these tricks. So in case you don't, that relieves stiffness at the front of the ankles. And so we're sort of fairly upright with a bit of weight in our hands. And then we're going to lift the heels of the hands. So my fingers are staying down on the floor, and I'm lifting the palms and the heels of the hands. My thumbs are coming up a little bit to show you a bit closer to the screen. I'll use a yoga block to demonstrate. It's this movement. And with some weight coming through your hands, this is strengthening your forearms and your wrists, as well as stretching the underside of the hands. So our hands are often holding things, contracting like this, and this stretch this way is very helpful for the finger joints there. And you might well feel it quite strongly in your forearms. And the more weight you place on your forearms, so if you take your hips up a bit, you're more in a sort of cat position, the more you'll feel it in your forearms. You've probably done quite a few of these now. So we'll come up to kneeling or upright kneeling and release our wrists by circling the hands. Excellent. Cool. So with this kind of awareness of strengths in our body, of course, one part of it is developing strength, having enough strength. And often we don't kind of give ourselves credit for the ways in which we are already strong. So it's partly awareness, it's partly obviously an actual thing of, if we do a lot of of those mini sit-ups, we're developing core strength, and that will kind of give us a sense of power, which might not be there if we've just returned from a space trip, as you do, and have been in zero gravity, and all your muscular strength has become weak, or if you're recovering from illness or something, we can feel sort of physically weak, and it can give a sense of mental lack of resilience as well, or lack of mental strength. So a few kind of stronger ways of working with building up this kind of strength we can do through plank and downward dog. So again, if wrists are a bit of an issue, we can do the elbow plank. So that's very doable. We can also do a sort of partial plank where, as you can see, I'm taking my knees a bit sort of behind my hips. So in cat, they'd be here, taking them back a bit and tucking my tailbone under. And that creates quite a lot of activity in my core. So that's a sort of in-between stage plank. And then full plank is there. So as soon as I take my hips up, it also gets a little bit easier. And that goes towards downward dog. So I'm proposing having a little bit of a play, as it were, with downward dog, plank, and then child pose as the resting pose. You might want to take your socks off like I've just done. So we can choose a version of plank that works for us. And we can go into downward dog from there. Maybe need to walk your feet in a bit. And we could go back to plank. And then at any time you need a rest, you could do a little puppy dog hand stretch as well. And then rest in child pose. So I'll show it again from the side, this little combination. So we can start in plank or a modified plank. And we can see how it is to come into downward dog. Quite a long distance between my feet and my arms, which makes dog a bit more effort. And then maybe back to plank and resting with a little hand lift to release. You can also do a few of these forearm rotations. They're quite nice to release any stiffness in the wrists and the forearms. And of course, these ones as well that we just did. And even if we just stay in plank for 1 second, we'll be building up strength. So noticing what you can do. And if it's too strong, you can come back to these lying down versions. Or if you're getting tired, or you would get more power today from taking an easier approach because you need to conserve energy. You can do this version of downward dog. And this version of plank. Lying down, pushing up, stretching your heels away and fully exhaling. You'll still be working your core. Flowing between that and that whilst being aware of your core, you're still going to build some core strength. You're still moving. And then the rest here would be knees to chest. So Pema Chodron, a Buddhist teacher and writer that I've read quite a lot of books by and done some online courses with, she always says, we can only start where we are. So if we start with a dodgy back or arthritis or feeling this way or that way, that's where we are. And there's always something we can do, even if it's just breath awareness, still yoga. So having a rest, it looks like people are having a rest and coming back to the breath, being relaxed and easy, particularly in your belly. You might like to place your hands on your belly if you're lying on your back. And if you're in child pose, to have your knees a bit wider apart so your belly can hang loose on the in-breath in particular. And there might be an awareness of feeling a little bit tired after the stronger poses, which is a sign that some strengthening has happened, some increase in power. And as we do this, I think particularly being aware of our core and how we use our core muscles can give us a lot of information about how we move in our lives as well. We're using our core when we bend over to pick something up. We can practice doing strenuous things, reaching, lifting on the exhale in our lives as well, because that's when the core naturally contracts with the exhalation. Gives us a bit more oomph, a bit more power to make that movement, to put in that effort. And to rest as well, to rest and recuperate. And you might have some awareness of whether you consider yourself to be more of a sprinter or more of a marathon runner, as it were. Are you someone who is quite good at doing something sort of very, very energetically and fast? And then you kind of quickly worn out and need a rest? Or are you someone who can keep going and has a lot of stamina to kind of plod on? I'm the latter. I'm more of a marathon runner. Not that I've ever run one, but I'm definitely, if I was going to get into athletics, I'd do the marathon and not the sprint. If I wanted a gold medal, that would be my natural strength, would be in sustaining a kind of slower pace. I'm quite good at that. So we'll come back up to sitting. So yoga is a kind of practice that suits me well because it does tend to be more slow, um, kind of stamina based. So if we do things like sun salutations, a series of postures, it still tends to be quite slow. It's not like going for a fast run. So it tends to build that power to slow down and to be very aware of how we're moving. And then we hope that that translates into how we move in our lives. And I think it does. So that core strength is one example. Once we've got that, or once we're breathing more efficiently or more naturally, then that's going to come into our lives and how we are in our lives off the mat. So in our standing posture, we can pay attention to that. So again, there might be some awareness. Am I using my core? So have I got that sense that I'm not just kind of flopping this way or that way. I've got a little bit of a feeling of my tailbone dropping down. So I'm not actively tucking under, not actively lifting my tail. And finding that neutral position where you'd have a bit of tone in your belly. And at the same time, it's not so tightly held that you can't breathe. So if you place a hand there or hands there, can you still feel a bit of movement? So you've got that power of flexibility and strength. You can breathe. We're going to work our core and our balance. So we're going to start with just moving our arms forwards and back. You can breathe in on the up and out on the down. So just going slowly, breathing in, up, out, down. And you might already feel a bit of activity in our core in different ways to maintain our mindful standing and our breathing. Building up strength in our shoulders. If we lift up the back arm as high as we can, we'll be strengthening the triceps, the backs of your upper arms. And then we can release our arms. If you're interested in building up strength in your arms or toning this area, you can do these movements holding like tins of beans or water bottles as well. So if you find this quite easy, you want to build up a bit more, you can always do some of these with small weights or household objects that weigh maybe a pound or a couple of pounds to start with and then build up. Then we'll go to our legs. So we're going to lift one leg, the knee coming up to hip level if possible, and then going to the other side. Again, being aware when you do this, awareness again, that you're engaging your core a little. So you can slightly maybe feel a curling in. It's not very big, it's not really big forward bend, wobbly on my right foot there. There's a contraction here down to the thighs. And if it's helpful, you can bring your gaze to a still point on the floor a few meters away or beyond the screen. Maybe there's something you can focus on the wall. So bringing our awareness to how the whole body can help us to balance. Our eyes have really a tremendous amount of influence on our balance. Our ears as well. Anyone who's ever had one of those ear infections, labyrinthitis is one of them that affect your balance, make you feel dizzy, give you that vertigo feeling. A lot of our senses are involved in balance, as well as the strength in the body. And then you can see if you can let your arms be involved. So noting when I lift my right leg up, my left arm is going forwards and vice versa. So this is what we would naturally do when we walk. Anyone's done Nordic walking, that's what you do with the sticks, poles. So there's a contraction across the torso, around the waist. There's a bit of a twist happening. There's a slight side bend happening when we walk. If you feel very wobbly, you can speed up a bit, and a kind of faster pace can be helpful here for balance. And to challenge your balance, you can slow down. And then perhaps go really slow motion and stay for a breath or two in the balance, like a kind of runner's balance, we could call it. As if we're running and we've stopped mid-flow. It's okay to wobble. If you lose your balance like I just did, just start again. Remember also, it might be harder if you're on a soft carpet rather than a hard floor. And then finishing on the side where it's harder to balance, if you have one, like I do. Finish with a few breaths if you can on that side. And then we can shake it off. Good. Strengthening some of the connections there, awareness of the whole body working together with the breath, the balance, the gaze. And those can be powerful realizations of all the stuff our body just does. And a lot of the time we're not even aware of how amazing we are, how amazing our bodies are. Good. So then we'll finish with one more kind of strengthening pose for the back of the body, the whole of the back of the body. So I'll just show you that one. It's the locust pose. It's a slightly modified version. So I'll show you this way first, and hopefully you can hear me, or I'll turn myself around again in a minute anyway. So this one we do lying on our front. If it's uncomfortable to lie on your front, you can always put a pillow or a cushion kind of at the bottom of your ribs, or the front of your hips, depending on whether it's your chest or your hips that feel uncomfortable. It's quite nice, already gives me a bit of a lift. And then my arms are by my side with the palms up. And I'm going to lift up here and lift my feet slightly off the ground as well. Like a bit like a Superman or Superwoman pose, flying through the air. So everything is lifting up. And you can experiment both with lifting on the inhale and then coming down on the exhale, and the other way around. What feels better? What gives more ease and maybe more movement? And also you can look down at the ground. I was looking up so that you could hear me better, hopefully. But you don't need to crane your neck. You can keep your chin tucked down and your gaze down towards the ground. And then after a few of these, coming back to pose of the child for a few breaths, or if you're more comfortable rolling onto your back, you can do that. We'll be going into relaxation soon anyway, so see what works. If you feel quite energetic, you might like to do a downward dog. Something forward bendy that relaxes your back. Stretches your back muscles. And being aware of your whole body in this moment of resting or forward bending, whatever you're doing, perhaps with a sense of the muscular layer, the sheet of muscles quite close to the surface, like your biceps are visible just under the skin of your upper arms. And your thigh muscles are quite visible, your calf muscles are quite visible. So that sense there's a layer of muscle, like an inner sort of webbing just under your skin, and it holds you up and it holds you together and it helps you to move. It's powerful because of its strength and its flexibility. And if you don't consider yourself as very strong, think again, because you're holding up your own body weight all the time, you're moving around in your life, you're functioning pretty well, you're not collapsed on the floor without any capacity to resist the force of gravity. So you're pretty strong. And then there's a deeper layer of muscles we can be aware of, like the pelvic floor, the deep lower down abdominal muscles, and they're like an inner corset that support you from the inside. and they help you breathe. And then there's the muscle of your heart, the heart muscle. Just beating all day and all night. It's been beating your whole life, and hopefully it will carry on beating for quite a lot longer. Appreciating for a moment the inherent power in your body, by bringing awareness to things that perhaps we more or less take for granted or don't fully appreciate, or even sometimes maybe think aren't good enough because we don't have a bodybuilders, top athletes body, but actually we're all pretty high up on the athletic scale. We can function in our lives without aids. And of course, knowing also that through our practice we can build up a bit more strength. And you'll see more results if you do practice and exercise about 3 times a week, so there's not too long a gap, and you do other things as well, like walking or cycling or swimming, maybe using some weights and just yoga. Particularly my classes are quite gentle. I'm going to be super toning, but enough for this general level of health, especially when combined with some more aerobic stuff, slightly more sprinty stuff. And the other aspect of awareness and power is to be aware of being able to relax and being aware of when we're not able to relax, and learning what to do. Learning what we're doing with our bodies when we're not able to relax, because it's usually something we're doing with that same musculature that we use to move, to feel strong. And that gets in the way of fully relaxing. So if you haven't already, take a moment to come to probably a lying down posture or a supported seated pose with something behind your back to rest against. Maybe grabbing an extra layer if you're going to potentially get cold. So awareness is also a powerful force in terms of learning how to calm ourselves down, learning, finding out, noticing what we're doing when we're finding it hard to relax. What are we doing when we're stressed out? So a lot of the physiological things that happen when we're on alert, which is basically the state of stress, is a kind of heightened alert, ready to fight, ready to flee, or we're freezing, or we're kind of collapsing. Those are all very natural, instinctual survival responses. And sometimes they're not really needed because there isn't a tiger in the room, but there might be a metaphorical tiger in the form of COVID-19. But right now, knowing that you're safe. Right now, knowing in this moment, there's no danger. So if there's anxiety in a moment where you logically know you're safe, you might still be doing something with your body that's part of that vigilance, being a bit on hyper alert response. And I think a lot of us noticed it at the start of the crisis. Might be why people became very tired after the first couple of weeks. There seemed to be a wave of exhaustion going around the community. And maybe that's settled down now. Maybe there's still some of that there. So we'll visit the different muscle groups that are often part of this response of responding to perceived or actual danger. And we'll start with the head. We'll start with the inside of our head, as it were, which is our thoughts. So when we did the From Warrior to Warrior class, I mentioned, the uselessness of a lot of our worries, and they kind of disempower us because they might get us stuck in this loop of catastrophizing, which isn't really based on reality, or it's kind of, our mind has picked up an aspect of reality and has enlarged it and is chewing on it in a way that's not helpful. And whilst we can't always stop that, it's like when you've got a song in your head, it's going round and round like a broken record. It doesn't help to just want to stop it. I wish this song would go out. My head doesn't help. What we can do is to kind of just let it be. Oh, okay, so my mind's doing that. That's all right. I can kind of let it be there in the background, like the bird song is in the background, like the traffic noise is in the background. It's just a bit of noise. It's like the humming of the fridge. So we can take our awareness somewhere else. We can be aware that this is going on in our mind, and that we can be aware that it's not true and it's not helpful right now. We don't need to stop it. We can just let it be in the background like a babbling brook. And we can let our head rest on the ground. It gives us this sense of support, and maybe a sense also of being able to put the thoughts down in a physical sense, putting my head down. And then we can check the muscles of our face. So often in those moments of catastrophizing, we'll be doing something with our forehead muscles. We might be lifting our eyebrows, which is the startle response, or frowning. So we can relax our forehead and the skin and muscles between our eyebrows. And we can let our eyes relax by looking at something calming, like the blue sky or some nature. Or we could close our eyes and simply let our eyes rest. And we can let our tongue relax inside our mouth, which will help to relax the jaw. And the tongue muscle itself is also part of this response. So relaxing our tongue If there's anything you can do, you can relax your tongue. In any moment, it will make you slightly calmer. Nobody will know you're doing it. You can do that in the middle of an argument. As long as you're not talking or shouting at the other person, you can relax your tongue. And you can relax your shoulders. Allow your shoulders to gently ride with the rhythm of the breath. If you're sitting up, you might have a little bit of shoulder lift on the in-breath. There's no need to do anything. Your shoulders will respond to the breath without you having to consciously do anything with your shoulders. So let your shoulders be. And let your belly be. Let your belly relax on the in-breath. And let it pull back on the out-breath. And then being aware for a moment of your whole body. Having let go of these areas where there might have been some unnecessary effort or contraction. And taking awareness gradually into the space around you. You might softly open your eyes if they have been closed and tune into what you can hear. Still aware of yourself, your body, expanding your awareness outwards to take in more of the present moment, opening your senses outwards. Knowing what is happening in the present moment. And the power of that ultimately is that it helps us to be fully present for our lives, not lost in distraction, not lost in worries. Right here, right now. And gently moving your body again, moving your body in the space around you, perhaps taking a couple of deeper breaths, perhaps choosing to rest longer. That's going to give you more energy later in the day. You might need it more later. So making that choice based on awareness of the current circumstances that you're in. And if you're ready to come up to sitting and carry on with your day, and doing that.